Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a privilege to take part in today's debate, especially at a time when the whole of Britain and the Commonwealth is preparing to mark a weekend of remembrance in the most dignified, unique and here-at-home, very British way. The great British sailor, soldier and airman are the very best in the world, and throughout our nation's rich history, our armed forces have never let us down. Generation after generation of excellence and endeavour, courage and commitment, dedication and delivery, never turning away even in the darkest hour, always the first to stand between home and danger. And it is right that Remembrance Sunday is a focal point for Britain and that the whole of the country pauses to remember. It's right. I'm happy to give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does my honourable friend share with me a great sigh of relief that those service personnel who were awarded the PJM medal will be able to at last honour their colleagues who fell in the service of this country in Malaysia this year, and that that medal has finally been agreed that they can wear it this year?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady for her intervention. I do share her thoughts about that medal. I do know from my own previous experience that the very subject of medals can be one which is controversial, but in this case I absolutely share the sentiments that she's expressed in this House. And as I prepare to mark Remembrance Day in Barnsley, my constituency, tomorrow, for the first time since leaving the Army earlier this year, I'm reminded of Sergeant Andy McFarlane from the Adjutant General Corps, who wrote a poem while serving in Afghanistan in 2008. It begins, "The news is spread far and wide, another comrade has sadly died. A sunset vigil upon the sand as a soldier leaves this foreign land." Mr. Deputy Speaker, bravery is a word all too often used, but rarely earned. And those words speak of our bravest men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, not in the pursuit of personal gain or individual glory, not without knowing the risks, not while surrounded by the comforts of home, but in a foreign land where danger and uncertainty is in fact the only certainty. For me, this debate and this weekend is simple. It's about the families at home with their loved ones who are serving overseas. It's about veterans who live on, carrying the scars, mental and physical, and most of all, it's about the fallen. For 2 minutes tomorrow, Britain will stand united, shoulder to shoulder in remembrance. And tomorrow, I will be remembering all that have served our country, but in particular, my own regiment, the Parachute Regiment. But amongst others, I will also be remembering the soldiers of the Yorkshire Regiment and the soldiers of the Light Dragoons. I will be remembering the late Corporal Brian Budd, VC, of the Parachute Regiment and his family. I will be remembering the late Corporal Mark Wright, GC, of the Parachute Regiment and his family. I will be remembering the late Barnsley-born Captain Martin Driver of the Royal Anglican Regiment and his family. And I will be remembering the late Major Matt Bacon of the Intelligence Corps and his family. And I will also be remembering the late Lieutenant Colonel Rupert Thornlow of the Welsh Guards, the highest ranked fatality in Afghanistan, and his wife Sally, who joined me and other colleagues in Parliament earlier this week. I will also tomorrow be particularly remembering the soldier from the 4th Battalion, the Yorkshire Regiment, who was killed in Afghanistan only yesterday. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sure on behalf of honourable and right honourable members across the House that when I say our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this most difficult of times. Mr. Deputy Speaker, every life is equally precious and should equally be remembered. For those of us that have had the great honour of serving, despite now often leading very busy lives, every day brings with it quiet moments of reflection and remembrance. And in this place, walking down the long Westminster corridors, in the lift on the way over to this chamber, sitting behind my desk late each evening, every single day. For us, it's not just about the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, because every day I find myself pausing to remember friends with whom I have served, but who never made it back to see their loved ones. Every day I find myself thinking about my own children and what might have been had I not enjoyed the luck that I did. And every day I am very grateful, and I remember every day the families who will always be missing a mother or a father, a husband or a wife, a son or a daughter. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I knew 10 of the first 100 men and women killed while serving in Iraq. At that point, I stopped counting. I felt that I had to. And despite what many believe about the wars and their implications on global security, on international legitimacy, and on the nature of UK-American relations, nobody should ever doubt that those who have fallen were amongst our very best and amongst our very bravest. They are at the heart of all that is still great about Britain today. But I believe we should strive to do better as politicians in shaping the debate about defence to ensure that the forces community receive the support that it both needs and deserves. I'm delighted to give way to my
friend for giving way. I think he's moving on to a point that we really need to do more for those that haven't really adjusted so well as he has on coming out of the army. And I certainly have seen many, both with physical injuries, but also those mental scars that perhaps don't come out until many years afterwards.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. He makes a very useful point, which has been highlighted by other members in this very useful debate today. The reality is that those people who've served often in the most difficult circumstances in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya and elsewhere, often don't present symptoms from those experiences until many years after the conflict is finished. So I think it's incredibly important that we continue as a society, as governments, as politicians, to keep a very close eye on those people in the future. And I'm grateful for that point. I also want to say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we must remember the last 10 years in Iraq, Afghanistan and Libya. Contentious, no doubt, but our support from government and in Parliament and across the UK for the veterans and their families must always be unequivocal. We must remember the value of charities such as the Royal British Legion, SAFA and Help for Heroes and many others beside, all of whom contribute so much. For over 90 years, the Royal British Legion has been a constant, a pillar of continued strength for those who have served and for their families. And I believe that their call, which is shared by many others, to leave the Chief Coroner out of the Public Bodies Bill was the right thing to do for our armed forces and for their families. And I believe that we should have listened to the Legion when they made that very important point. We also must remember that when the shots stop firing and the last bomb has detonated, that our support for our forces must be absolute and unending. And when Afghanistan and Iraq are consigned to the history books, our armed forces' physical injuries and mental recollections of those wars will live on forever. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our veterans deserve not adequate, not better, but the best support. And on Friday, a veteran and his wife, Mark and Helen Mullins, were found dead, having killed themselves in despair. We, Mr. Deputy Speaker, must not forget those who served but now struggle, fought but now feel forgotten, stood to but now stand alone. And we, on all sides of this House, have a duty to protect our armed forces and ensure that the public support for them endures. I quoted earlier from Sergeant Macfarlane's poem, which concludes, "Reveille sounds and the parade is done, the hero remembered, forgotten by none. They leave to start the journey back in a coffin draped in the Union Jack." Mr. Deputy Speaker, the fallen, we must not forget and we must always remember. And I know that I'm enormously proud to have been in our armed forces for 15 years. I know that this House is enormously proud of our armed forces. And I also know that this weekend our country will demonstrate our pride in the best armed forces in the world. Thank you.